The storm had swallowed half the plains before Eli Harwood even realized night had come. The sky was a fist of black clouds rolling across the hills, cracking open with lightning that turned the dying day white. He had been out checking the west fence line, making sure his cattle hadn't wandered, when the wind began to howl like a living thing. "Come on, Buck," he muttered to the old hound trotting beside his horse. "We're heading back." He tugged the reins and turned his gelding toward home. But a mile out, something caught his eye, a shape where nothing should have been. A wagon. Splintered, tilted, one wheel ripped clean off. And beside it, someone crouched in the dirt. Eli slowed his horse, eyes narrowing. Even through the sheets of rain, he saw her, a woman, small, wrapped in a torn blanket, hair plastered to her face. She wasn't moving much, just holding her arm, trembling. At first he thought she might be dead. But then her head lifted slightly, and she looked right at him. Eyes dark as obsidian, full of fear. Eli felt his breath catch. Not because she was dangerous, but because she was alone. And hurt. Buck ran ahead, sniffing at the broken wagon. Eli dismounted, lifting his lantern and moving closer. The woman flinched, shrinking back like she expected a blow. "It's all right," Eli said softly, raising both hands. "I ain't here to harm you." She didn't understand the words. He could tell that right away. She spoke something in Apache, the syllables low and tight with pain. The storm drowned half of it out. Her left arm was cut badly, blood mixed with rain down her side. Her ankle looked swollen, maybe twisted. And the wagon, it had been hit by something. Maybe overturned by wind. Maybe worse. Eli crouched a few feet from her. "You're hurt," he repeated gently. "Let me help." She shook her head fast, retreating until her back hit the broken wheel. Her whole body was trembling, her eyes wild. Lightning tore across the sky again, lighting her face. Young, maybe 18 or 19, but hardened by the land. Her cheek was streaked with dirt. Her lips blue from cold. Another rumble of thunder rolled over them. Eli made a decision. If he left her here, she'd die. The storm would finish the job her injuries started. He stepped forward slowly, palms out. "I'm not leaving you," he said. "Not like this." Buck whined softly, nudging the girl's knee with his nose, not threatening, offering comfort. That tiny gesture changed everything. The woman's breath shook. She looked at the dog, then at Eli, and her shoulders sagged, her strength finally giving out. Her eyes fluttered, lids heavy. Eli moved quickly, catching her just as she slumped forward. She let out a small cry, not of protest, but pain. "I got you," he whispered. He wrapped his coat around her slight frame, lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, the bones of her shoulders sharp against his hands. She shivered violently against him. Eli placed her gently across his horse, mounting behind her and steadying her with one arm. She leaned unconsciously into him, her head against his chest. Buck followed closely as they rode. The storm worsened. Rain beat against Eli's face. Wind shoved at him. But the cabin wasn't far. He urged the horse forward, faster, because he could feel her growing weaker with every passing minute. By the time they reached home, she was barely conscious. Eli carried her inside, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around them like a blessing. He kicked the door shut with his boot, set her on his worn sofa near the fireplace, and hurried to stoke the flames higher. The fire glowed bright and gold, lighting the room. The woman's eyes opened for a second, dazed. She whispered a word he couldn't catch. "You're safe?" Eli said, kneeling beside her. Safe. He didn't know if she understood, but his voice softened instinctively. He wrung out a cloth, cleaned her wound with warm water, and wrapped her arm in fresh bandages. She winced, breath hitching, but didn't pull away. When he finished, she was staring at him with confused exhaustion. Her eyes, though filled with fear, held a flicker of trust. He set a blanket over her and stepped back, unsure what else to say. It had been years since he tended to another human being. The ranch had been lonely for a long time. Too long. He sat down across the room, giving her space. Buck lay near the door, ears flicking but body relaxed, as if guarding her. The storm hammered the roof. The fire crackled softly. And for the first time in a long while, Eli wasn't alone. He watched her breathing slow, Her face softened. The trembling faded. Outside, thunder growled one last time, then drifted off. Eli rubbed a hand over his jaw. "Well, girl," he muttered quietly. "Looks like fate dropped you straight in my path." And something in him, something old and rusted, warmed in a way he hadn't felt in years. The storm had settled over the San Pedro Valley the way guilt settles over a man who's run too long, slow, heavy, and impossible to outride. Eli Carson pushed the cabin door shut against the wind, his arms full of the unconscious Apache woman he'd found beside the broken wagon. He'd carried cattle across rivers, hauled wounded ranch hands across canyons, but somehow she felt lighter and heavier all at once. Light in body, heavy in consequence. He laid her gently on his bed, pulled the wool blanket up to her shoulders, and knelt beside her. Her face was smeared with dust and exhaustion, but beneath that, she was striking. Strong cheekbones, sun-warmed skin, eyes fringed with long dark lashes that trembled with every slow breath she took. He swallowed. This was trouble. Beautiful trouble. Eli rose, rubbing a hand across the back of his neck. Helping her was the right thing to do. His ma had raised him that way, but right things had a habit of turning into hard things in the Arizona territory. He stirred the embers in the fireplace, added another log, and glanced back at her. Still breathing steady. Still alive. Good. But he needed answers. The woman woke sometime after midnight. It wasn't the fire's crackle that stirred her, nor the softness beneath her. It was silence, unnatural, holding its breath like a predator in the dark. She sat up fast, wincing at the pain in her ribs, and reached for a knife that wasn't there. Instinct told her to hide. The cabin was small, built by a man who valued function over comfort. A pair of boots by the door. A hat hung on a nail. A saddle leaning against the wall. The smell of beef stew lingering from a pot on the stove. And a stranger leaning against the hearth, arms crossed. His voice came low and gentle. "Easy now. You're safe." Her hand slid under the blanket anyway, searching, testing. He held up both palms. "I ain't your enemy." Her eyes narrowed. "Where am I?" "My cabin. About 7 miles south of the ridge where I found you." She blinked, confusion flickering in her expression. "You carried me? I wasn't about to leave you out there." His voice was firm, but even. "Storm like that. You wouldn't have lasted the night." She studied him, as if peeling back his words to see what lay beneath them. "You should not have helped me," she said quietly. "My people, they do not mix with yours." "Not now." He let out a small scoff. "Too late to tell me that." For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched. Almost a smile, almost a warning. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated long enough for him to know the name mattered. At last, she said, "Nashdiza," a soft, gliding sound. "My mother called me Zia." "Zia," he repeated. The name slid warm off his tongue. "I'm Eli Carson." She looked at him differently after that, as if a name meant something between them. Eli made her drink some water, then set a bowl of stew on the table. She stayed sitting on the bed, watching him ladle vegetables like she was watching a wolf pretend to be tame. "You gonna sit?" he asked. She shook her head. "I can stand." "You can," he said, "but you ain't going to." He brought the bowl to her instead. She accepted it cautiously, sniffed it, tasted it, then ate with slow, deliberate bites. Every movement was careful, controlled. A woman raised among warriors. Eli sat on the edge of a crate a few feet away. He didn't want to crowd her. "You were alone out there," he said. "How'd your wagon break?" The spoon stilled in her hand. Finally, she spoke. "My husband's clan left us behind." "Us?" Her jaw tightened. "My brother and me." "And where is he?" The fire popped. Zia's eyes closed. "He fought," she whispered. "He did not win." Eli's ribs tightened around his heart. "I'm sorry," he said softly. She didn't answer. Grief held her like a second storm. Silent, roaring, endless. After a moment, she asked, "Why did you not leave me? Many white men would have." Eli gave a short, tired shrug. "'Cause my ma'd haunt me to the grave if I didn't help somebody who needed it." Zia studied him again with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "Your mother must have been a good woman." "She was," he said, voice roughening just a little. "Died a few winters back." Silence settled, softer this time. Zia tried to stand later, insisting she needed to leave. Eli blocked the doorway with one arm, not even raising his voice. You ain't going anywhere. I have to, she said. A woman alone. Your people may think. My people can think whatever the hell they want, Eli replied. I don't leave folks in trouble. She stared up at him, chin tilted high. You do not know the trouble I bring. Then tell me. She looked away, breathing shallow. There are men tracking my clan, she murmured. Soldiers. They kill first. Ask questions later. Well, Eli said, good thing I'm not a soldier. You are one man. Yep. They will come. Let em. She blinked at him, confused, surprised, something else flickering in those dark eyes. Why do you care if they come for me? He didn't answer right away. Because she looked like someone who'd carried too much for too long. Because she was bruised and alone and still holding herself like a hawk with a broken wing. Because leaving her out there felt like sin. But all he said was, because it ain't right. And something in her expression softened. Just a little. Just enough. When she finally lay down again, Eli settled in the chair by the door, rifle across his knees. Not because he feared her, but because she'd told him soldiers were coming. He wasn't sure when sleep took him, but he knew exactly when he woke. Just before dawn, to the sound of hooves. More than one. Coming fast. Zia was already sitting up, eyes wide, breath sharp. They found us, she whispered. Eli stood, loading a second round into his rifle. No, he said, stepping between her and the door. They found me. And outside, the riders pulled to a stop. Men shouting. Boots dropping into dirt. Hands pounding on wood. Carson, we know she's in there. Zia's fingers clutched the blanket. Eli's voice dropped into something colder than winter nights. Stay behind me. Because whether he meant to or not, he'd already chosen her. The pounding at the door rattled Eli's cabin hard enough to shake the dust from the rafters. Carson, a voice barked. Captain Tate Harden. A man who wore his badge like armor and his hatred like a second gun. We know you're in there. Step aside and hand over the Apache woman. Zia stiffened behind Eli, her breath trembling in her chest. She didn't touch him. She didn't dare, but every line of her body said she was ready to fight or die. Eli slid one hand behind him, palm open, not touching her, just letting her know he was there. Don't move, he murmured. Outside, 5 horses snorted restlessly. Boots crunched in the dirt. A rifle clinked as someone shifted their grip. Eli called back through the door, voice steady as oak roots. She's under my roof. That makes her under my protection. Captain Harden spat a curse. Don't play saint, Carson. She's Apache. That's enough reason. Not for me. Eli saw Zia's shadowed profile in the corner of his eye, her lips parting, relief and disbelief mixing in a way that cut deep. Another fist hammered the door. You open up right now, or I'll break it down. Eli raised his rifle. You break my door, he said quietly. You won't like what happens after. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the breath before a gunshot. Zia touched Eli's elbow, barely a feather's weight. You cannot fight 5, she whispered. They will kill you for me. He didn't turn, didn't blink. That ain't their decision to make. Her eyes glimmered with something more than fear, guilt, maybe, anger. A lifetime of being hunted, blamed, dismissed. You are a fool, she breathed. Probably, he replied. But I'm a stubborn one. The corners of her eyes softened. Just a little. Outside, Harden's voice rose again. You've got 10 seconds to open this door. Eli leaned close enough for Zia to hear him over the wind. You trust me? Zia's jaw tightened. Her people didn't trust easily. Couldn't. Not in this world. But something about this man, the quiet fire in him, the way he'd carried her, the way he stood in front of her like a damn wall of bone and conviction. Something told her yes. She nodded. Good, Eli murmured. Stay low. Eli unbarred the door and swung it open before Harden hit 3. The captain stumbled forward, surprised, nearly tripping over his own boots. His men raised their rifles instantly, half expecting Eli to come out shooting. Eli didn't shoot. He just stepped into the doorway, blocking the view inside, rifle pointed at the ground, but ready. Harden recovered fast. You're harboring an Indian, he snapped. Against federal order. Federal orders got nothing to do with my cabin. She's dangerous. She's wounded. She's trespassing on white land. Eli's eyes hardened. You mean stolen land? A murmur rippled among the soldiers. Hardin's face flushed red. You watch your damn mouth. Eli lifted his rifle, just enough to remind Hardin he wasn't unarmed. You brought trouble to my doorstep, Eli said. State your business proper or get back on your horses. Hardin sneered. She was part of a raiding party. They killed settlers 6 miles north of here. Zia, listening from behind the half-open door, felt her breath seize. Eli didn't flinch. You got proof, he said flatly. It wasn't a question. Hardin's mouth twitched. We have suspicion, Zia whispered under her breath, voice shaking with fury. Aziz dined ei dalchini. They call us dogs. Eli heard her. He felt her anger like heat on his back. He stepped further out of the cabin, his presence a challenge. You ride out here, he said. Point your guns at a woman who ain't lifted a finger against you. And all you've got is suspicion? One of the younger soldiers shifted uneasily. Cap, maybe we oughta. Shut it. Hardin barked without looking at him. Then to Eli. This is your last warning. Move aside. No. The word hung heavy as thunder. Hardin's hand twitched toward his holster. Eli cocked his rifle. The soldiers froze. Zia, peering from the shadows, felt her heart slam against her ribs. She'd seen white men draw steel for less. The wrong breath could start a war. Hardin growled low. You're siding with the wrong people, Carson. Looks to me like you're the one hunting a lone woman. Eli shot back. 5 armed men. 1 injured girl. Who's the coward here? A few soldiers paled, glancing at one another. Hardin realized he was losing their fear, losing their obedience. He jabbed a finger toward Zia. She comes with us. Dead or alive. Eli's jaw worked. His thumb slid over the hammer of his rifle. You try it, he said, and you'll find out exactly how alive I can keep you. The air quivered like stretched wire. Finally, Hardin spit in the dirt. Fine. He yanked his reins. We're not done, Carson. The colonel'll hear of this. Eli kept his rifle raised until every horse turned and the sound of hooves faded down the trail. Only when silence fell did he lower the gun. Zia stepped out from behind the door. You should not have done that, she murmured. But there was something warm, fierce, and almost reverent in her gaze. Eli shrugged one shoulder. Didn't much like their tone. She stared at him. Then, slowly, like a sunrise, she smiled. A small one. A fragile one. But a real one. They spent the next hour reinforcing the cabin, moving crates against the windows, checking the rifle cartridges, readying the horses. Hardin wasn't the kind of man to lick his wounds quietly. They will return, Zia said. Eli nodded. Yeah, but I'll be ready. Zia tied her hair back with a strip of leather, her movement steady but slow, pain etched into each breath. Eli noticed. You shouldn't be up, he said. I cannot lay like a child while you fight for me. Ain't asking you to, he murmured. Just asking you not to hurt yourself worse. She met his eyes. Something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile and new. I have one question, she said softly. Ask it. Why? Her voice wavered. Why do you help me? Eli looked at her like the question wounded him. I ain't helpin' an Apache woman, he said. She stiffened. I'm helpin' you. Her breath caught. And in that moment, the world outside, soldiers, danger, fear, felt distant. But the moment didn't last. Hoofbeats thundered again. More this time. Eli's hand tightened around his rifle. Zia's fingers curled around his sleeve. Not Hardin, she whispered. Bigger. More men. Eli stepped to the window, and his stomach dropped. Not soldiers. Not raiders. Something worse. A rider carrying the red mark of the Sandstone Gang, the most feared group of outlaws south of the Gila. Zia, he said low. Yes. You weren't followed by soldiers. Zia's eyes widened, dread flooding them. You were followed by outlaws. The riders crested the ridge, guns raised, dust rising behind them like a storm of its own. Eli's voice went quiet, steady, lethal. Get ready. This ain't about you, or me. She swallowed hard. What is it about? Eli chambered around. It's about survival. And the first outlaw yelled. There he is. Carson. Time to settle our score. Zia stared at him. Eli, you know them? He didn't answer. Not with words. Just with the look of a man who'd carried a secret long before she collapsed beside his path. The cabin shuddered as the first bullets cracked against the wooden walls. Dust sprayed from the roof beams, and Zia instinctively ducked behind the stove. Eli's rifle sang back in rhythm with the outlaw's shots. Each pull deliberate, each breath measured. You need to stay down, Eli barked, glancing over his shoulder. Zia gritted her teeth, gripping the edge of the counter. I'm not afraid of bullets, she snapped, though her voice quavered. Eli's eyes softened for a brief instant. Ain't that bravery, stupidity too. Another crash shook the cabin. This time a crate splintered into pieces. Eli's quick reflexes pulled Zia further into cover. You fight well, she whispered, almost admiringly. Better than any man I've seen. Better than any man you've seen alive. Eli shot back with a crooked smile, then grimaced as another round ripped through the doorframe. Outside, the Sandstone Gang's riders circled like wolves, kicking up dust and shouting challenges. Eli's sharp gaze caught every movement. The leader at the front, a scar splitting his left cheek, eyes like cold iron. That man had a personal vendetta, and Eli knew why. Zia noticed the intensity in his stance, the way his fingers never left the rifle. You know them? She asked cautiously. Eli's jaw tightened. They used to be partners. Outlaws once. I tried to leave that life behind, but some debts, some grudges, never die. The leader barked a laugh, a sound full of malice. Carson, thought you could hide from us in these hills. Eli adjusted his aim through the cracked window. Ain't hiding, just surviving. The first outlaw kicked the cabin door, sending splinters flying. Eli fired, the bullet hitting the outlaw's shoulder. A grunt, then silence. Zia flinched. Her eyes were wide, not just at the violence, but at the man in front of her. A rugged cowboy, scarred by life, carrying the weight of the past, yet fiercely protective. She felt something stir deep inside, a mix of fear, awe, and a fragile trust. Another outlaw tried to flank them from the side. Eli grabbed Zia's hand. This way. He pulled her toward a back window. As they climbed through, Eli whispered, stick close. Don't let them see you. Outside, the Arizona sun had dropped low, painting the desert orange and red. The outlaw leader raised his rifle, spotting Eli and Zia retreating toward a rocky outcrop. You can run, Carson, but you can't hide, the man shouted. Eli smirked despite the danger. Hiding ain't my style. Zia followed him silently, adrenaline making her movements sharp and precise. Her trust in him had solidified. She knew now he would not falter, no matter the threat. They reached the rocks just as the first shots began to ricochet off stone. Eli fired strategically, keeping the gang at bay, while Zia crouched behind a boulder, heart pounding. You saved my life, she said quietly, once the initial volley slowed. And you saved mine, by staying alive, he replied. His eyes caught hers, serious, steady. You understand? I ain't letting anyone take you. Not soldiers, not outlaws. A shadow fell over them. Zia looked up. The outlaw leader had split from the main group, circling to cut off their escape. Eli cursed under his breath. We need a plan. Zia swallowed hard, feeling her pulse spike. What about the canyon? Eli's eyes narrowed. It's risky, but might be the only way. Narrow paths. I can funnel him, slow him down. The wind carried dust and the distant shouts of the gang. Eli grabbed Zia's hand again. Trust me, one step at a time. She nodded, her fingers tightening around his. In that moment, under the burning sky, she realized she did trust him. Completely. They sprinted toward the canyon's mouth, the rough terrain forcing them into a narrow path. Bullets whipped past them, thudding into rocks. Eli's experience shone, every shot, every move calculated. Then came the moment of reckoning, the leader charging straight at them on horseback. Eli aimed, but the distance was short. Jump, he yelled. Zia hesitated. He grabbed her, and together they leapt over a small crevice in the canyon floor. The horse thundered past, barely missing them, dust choking the air. Eli landed first, rolling to absorb the impact, then helped Zia down. She stumbled but didn't fall. He held her tight for a fraction of a second too long. Too close, he muttered. She looked up at him, her hair wild, eyes shining. I know, she said. Another volley of shots forced them deeper into the canyon. The walls rose like silent witnesses, enclosing them in shadows. Eli paused, assessing. We can lose them in here, if we're smart. Zia's voice dropped to a whisper. You've done this before, haven't you? Eli didn't answer immediately. Then he said, almost bitterly, more times than I care to count. And every time, someone paid the price for my choices. Zia's hand brushed his, almost accidentally, but he didn't pull away. You won't let me be a price, she said softly. Eli's jaw tightened, and his eyes softened. Not while I breathe. The outlaw leader cursed from the canyon's mouth, frustrated by the disappearing figures. Eli and Zia vanished into the winding shadows, the rocks and darkness their allies. As they ran, the bond between them deepened, not just trust, but something tender, fragile, and unspoken. Danger surrounded them, but so did the spark that neither could deny. For Eli, it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about keeping her alive. And for Zia, it wasn't just about hiding. It was about realizing she might have found a man who truly saw her, who truly mattered. The canyon walls towered around Eli and Zia, shadows stretching long in the fading sunlight. Dust hung in the air like a ghostly veil, and the distant clatter of hooves echoed off the rocky cliffs. Eli pressed his back against a jagged boulder, scanning every angle. They're close, he muttered, his hand tightening on his rifle. Zia crouched beside him, her breath shallow but steady. We can outsmart them, right? Eli's eyes met hers, serious but reassuring. We'll need every trick I know. Stick close, listen to the rocks. The outlaw leader and his men had followed them into the canyon, but the narrow paths and sharp bends worked in Eli's favor. He led Zia down a twisting trail, every step calculated. Small piles of loose rocks scattered with a tiny shift of his boot, alerting him to approaching danger. Suddenly, a shout rang out from above. A man tried to flank them from the ridge. Eli fired, and the outlaw stumbled, tumbling down the canyon floor. He groaned, out of commission. Keep moving, Eli urged. Almost there. Zia's pulse pounded in her ears, but there was a strange clarity in the chaos. She trusted him completely, and that trust gave her strength. Ahead, a narrow crevice opened into a wider hollow, a natural trap. Eli stopped, signaling her to stay low. This is it, he whispered. We can hold them here. They'll have no choice but to funnel in. As the outlaws appeared, one by one, Eli's eyes flashed. He picked off two men approaching too quickly, his shots precise. Zia's heart raced, but she remained hidden, following his instructions to the letter. The leader, scarred and furious, dismounted and advanced slowly. Carson, I swear this ends today. Eli stepped forward from behind the boulder, rifle raised. Not today. Not ever. A tense standoff filled the hollow canyon. Dust swirled around them. The sun dipped low, casting an amber glow over the rocks, painting them in shades of fire. The leader lunged suddenly, desperate. Eli sidestepped, delivering a swift punch that sent the man sprawling onto the rocky ground. Zia gasped, but Eli didn't falter. With another careful shot, the remaining outlaws scattered, their courage broken by his skill and determination. Silence fell. The canyon echoed only with their ragged breathing. Eli lowered his rifle, his eyes softening as he looked at Zia. We're clear for now. Zia stepped closer, trembling but alive. You saved me, she whispered. He shook his head. We saved each other. You had courage too, more than most men I've known. For a moment, they simply stood there, the canyon a quiet witness to their survival. The danger had passed, but the bond forged in the fire of bullets and fear remained unbroken. Finally, Zia dared a smile. What now? Eli's rugged face softened, almost tender. Now we ride. Far from this. Start fresh. And maybe figure out what comes after all this dust and blood. She laughed softly, the sound warm and light against the harsh canyon walls. I think I'd like that. He extended his hand, rough and calloused. She took it without hesitation. Together, they mounted his horse, the sun setting behind them in a blaze of gold and crimson. The canyon, which had been their prison, now became their path to freedom. Eli glanced at Zia, a rare, gentle smile breaking through his stoic exterior. "Hold on tight. It's a long ride ahead." "I will," she said, her voice steady. "With you." And as the horse carried them over the canyon rim, leaving the sandstone gang behind, the desert stretched before them. Not just a land of dust and danger, but a place where two hearts, tested by fire and fate, had found each other. For Eli and Zia, the journey was far from over, but for the first time, they faced the horizon together. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying their promise forward, that no shadow of the past could ever dim the spark they had found in each other.